All right, guys, I just wanted to hop up here right quick because I actually have a client at 10 o'clock, so I need to hurry up. But I could not let this opportunity go past to comment on this live. I'm sorry, not the live, but the interview with Amanda Seales and Shannon Sharpe. Some people sent it to me, and then I happened to see it on Instagram and was able to actually but watch the whole thing, take it in. I had to honestly watch it twice because it kind of pissed me off a little bit the first time. And I will say this is why when you have a platform, it is so important to make sure that you handle your platform responsibly and that you make sure that people that you are bringing on, that you have a working knowledge of what it is that you guys are going to discuss, because this would have been a great opportunity, especially for people of color, to get information and become knowledgeable about neurodivergence in our community. I will say this first, starting off, putting it out there, I am a Black woman who is diagnosed as what we call 2E. 2E is considered twice exceptional. So that means that you you're gifted. You meet the criteria for giftedness, certain IQ level, all of those other things. And you also have some level of what they call a disability, whether it be ADHD, autism. A lot of times those come as a couple. And other things, dyslexia. There's a lot of other forms of neurodivergence, but 2E is when you have a gifted diagnosis as well as some sort of disability. And so that's basically what Amanda Seales was trying to explain. And let me go ahead and put this disclaimer out there. I am not saying that Amanda Seales does not or has not had behaviors or interactions that people would consider quote unquote problematic. I don't have the insider knowledge of what happened with Insecure and all these other spaces that she's in, but I can say that as a late diagnosed ADHDer and someone who is gifted, that a part of the diagnosis is being having your social interactions and being able to read nuanced social interactions and cues and things of that nature and read the room. And your social skills do struggle at times. So just putting it out there in terms of my lived experience on top of me being a trauma therapist. And the reason why me being a trauma therapist, I think, comes into play is because there are a lot of people who are either late diagnosed, misdiagnosed, misunderstood, and have had impactful experiences in life because people may not recognize neurodivergence to look a different way than what is seen on the movies, typical white boy type of situation, as opposed to a Black woman, and how it can present differently, and it can be difficult to diagnose. So, I got 8 minutes into my appointment. Okay, first and foremost, the first thing that kind of like irritated me a little bit was the fact that Shannon had absolutely no idea, it appeared, about what neurodivergence was. I don't know if he was asking so that Amanda could go into more detail, but it seemed like as she was explaining, he was offering rebuttals that basically proved what she was saying. So yes, him saying, okay, well, just because you feel like your brain functions differently, that doesn't mean that you're on the spectrum. That's what neurodivergence is. It's not just a feeling that your brain functions differently. For a lot of us, we have no clue that it is us and our brain who may be a little different. So we spend a lot of time going through life in social situations, understanding or feeling as if misunderstood, or we're passionate or not understanding why certain people don't have the same reactions we do. And it just always feels as if we struggle in those kind of like nuanced way socially. So yeah, that is kind of exactly what it means, Shannon. Um, and kudos to Amanda Seales for being honest about the fact that it's difficult to identify in Black women because of racism. Because for Black women, we're not allowed to be sensory, have sensory overload. We're not allowed to kind of, experience those things that other neurodivergents have. Instead, we are considered irritable, bossy, controlling, bitter, whatever all of these negative adjectives that they want to use to describe Black women, which in its essence does have some of the root cause in racism and why we are overlooked and often late diagnosed for these things. Yes, feeling overloaded sensory wise can cause you to become irritable, can cause you to be operating on edge. Sensory things are very, very important when you think about neurodivergence, how to learn your system, and how to put different things in place. As Amanda was speaking about stimming. Stimming is something that is that a lot of neurodivergents do because it helps us to be able to get that sensory input into our system, and it helps to calm our system. So you may see a lot of neurodivergent people wringing their hands, or like, moving back and forth, or having fidgets, having loop earplugs. I know I keep a fidget, I keep loop earplugs in my ears as well, except for when I'm in session. And there are a lot of different ways: rubbing your hands together, tapping your feet, beating your leg. Those are all stim ways that you can stim. When you get in bed and you rub your feet together to get comfortable, that is considered stimming. So yes, shout out to Amanda for being able to kind of add a little bit of education, for standing strong on the fact that, yes, I got a diagnosis. Yes, I meet the criteria. Yes, this is exactly what it is. Not to excuse anything, but kudos to her for being brave enough to broach a topic that is not talked about enough, especially in the Black community and especially with Black women. The interview felt invalidating in some ways, as Amanda talked about her neurodivergence and what that meant for her. Because as he says, oh, well, just because you have a gift, or you see things differently, or your brain functions different, that doesn't mean you're on the spectrum. You just described what neurodivergence was, that if your brain functions differently, that is neurodivergence. If your brain functions or operates or processes in a way that is different than a neurotypical person, you are neurodivergent. Now, getting down to like the nitty gritty of what the diagnosis is and all of that, whether it's ADHD, autism, dyslexia, those type of things, is another thing. But he just described what that is. And yes, you can be gifted and autistic, as Amanda stated. There is a thing that's called high functioning autism. That's why they moved autism to a spectrum. It used to be a thing where if you were high functioning, they would call it Asperger's. So a lot of your people who are geniuses, or who had certain quirks about them but were hella smart, they will label them as having Asperger's. And then autism was labeled for the people who may be a little bit more nonverbal, who may do the hand flapping, or who may have more or different traits of the disability. But now that autism is on a spectrum, it literally goes from high functioning all the way to nonverbal, to where a person is completely and totally dependent upon someone else for their care and their aid. So yes, that is why it's called a spectrum. And if she is saying that she has been evaluated and she has the diagnosis, I think for anyone, it's tacky to give them pushback about that. This isn't something that's popping and popular and everybody wants to jump on the autism train. For a lot of us, being late diagnosed autistic or ADHD or whatever the case may be, it literally feels like shackles are being loosed from you because you understand that something is different. You understand that the way that you perceive the world in terms of fairness and justice and like being passionate about, things, I guess, is different than what typical people are able to do. You at times can have abrasive interactions or not read social cues very well. And again, this is not to make excuses for her, but why is it that mental health, especially with Black women, is the only space where we don't get a pass? It's almost like telling somebody who is coming from chemotherapy that is throwing up or exhausted, oh my God, yeah, I know you have cancer and you're having chemotherapy, but I mean, just because you're throwing up and tired, does that really mean that you are having side effects of chemotherapy or that, it's because of the cancer? You would look at someone like they have like 3 eyes if they said something like that. Like, yes, that's exactly where it comes from. What do you mean? So with mental health, especially with people of color or with Black women, it almost seems like we aren't allowed to be able to utilize and to say the things that impact us and be given the same amount of grace as anyone else that is autistic, ADHD, whatever the case may be, because in certain situations we are able to articulate and we don't back down and we are outspoken. And a lot of those things are traits of someone who may have autism. Autism is a spectrum. I really encourage you all, as a result of this interview, to please, 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 please do your research. Do your research, not just about neurodivergence, but about 2E and other ways that brain composition and stuff can really impact people. Because this could have been major, I think, for us to really get a conversation going in our community that needs to be had, but instead it feels like time was spent challenging what she stated her diagnosis was, just because she doesn't present in a way that everyone else feels like someone that is autistic should present. And that's bullshit. All right, anyways, it's 10 o'clock. I gotta go see my client, but you guys have an amazing and a great day. Yeah, because, child. Bye-bye.